Secrecy obstructs democracy by blocking the public's interest to know. That's according to Associate Professor in Media Studies, Professor Glenda Daniels from the University of Witwatersrand. Daniels, who's also the Gauteng convener of SANEF, says when there are no facts and too many contradictions, well, speculation grows and fake news spreads. The professor joining me now to talk more about her views stemming from the article she penned. Professor Daniels, thank you very much for your time. It's no secret that had it not been for the treasure trove of the emails which ultimately gave us what we now know as state capture, the public would not have known what was going on, and therefore there would not have been a judicial commission of inquiry into state capture. Just how important is it that the media is allowed to do its work by publicizing or publishing even classified information at certain instances?
Good morning, Xoli, and thanks for having me. Indeed, as you were saying, you're talking about 10 years back during the state capture, the start of the investigations into state capture actually started with the media and the media leaks. So if it wasn't for the fact of all that evidence coming out in newspapers, in fact, a good 15 years, we would not know today, and the Zondo Commission indeed would not have had all that information and, be able to call up those witnesses. So, as you were saying, what this really means is that the media play an extremely important role as a conduit of information to the public. And they can't be constantly blocked from playing this role, and they can't be constantly having to go to court to say, don't gag us because this is in public interest.
Yeah.
It's just antithetical to our democracy and the free flow of information, of course.
And so, Professor Daniels, should the media cower, therefore, when it is challenged? For example, there's a recent case of the Moti Group against the Amapungane Center for Investigative Journalism, and you talk about a gag. There was that gag which has since been lifted now. How should we read these developments, and how important is it that the media asserts its authority?
It's a very important development, Xoli, because in fact the media shouldn't have had to go to court to publish that investigation and that story about the Moti files. It should have just been able to do what it normally does. So what happens is investigative units, journalists, get leaks all the time in the form of dossiers brought to them by whistleblowers. And then what they start doing is they start corroborating information. They go to this person, they go to that company, they go to that NGO, they go to the government, etc., to find out. Then they're ready to publish. Then let's inverted commas say crooks find out this is about to happen, because of course the media have to give everybody the right to reply. That's in the press code and, from the press council. That's fair and ethical journalism, that you give the other side the right to reply. What this lawyer had done, the judge had done, is just done an ex parte hearing, which means hearing only one side. It heard the side of the Moti lawyers and decided to gag the publication. Indeed, it asked the Amapungane to hand over its files. That was subsequently overturned, but then it kept the second part of the judgment, which is to say you can only publish in October. Then the journalists, lawyers had to go back to court. Now, all this kind of backwards and forwards and to court and out of court, and lawyers, letters and interdicts takes a hell of a lot of time, and it's a huge cost to journalists and to media companies, cost that they can't afford, and it's not part of our democracy in terms of, we have acts to protect it, like the Access to Information Act. Indeed, the latest judgment by the Deputy Judge President of the South Gauteng High Court, Roland Sutherland, overturned everything with punitive costs to the Moti Group, which is fantastic for media freedom.
We can't also not revisit the case of a former president, Professor Daniels, former President Jacob Zuma, taking to court a journalist and taking her to court on the basis of a private prosecution. It would seem that the media, the easy interpretation is that our work is under attack. Is that a simplistic view of it, or are we indeed being challenged, and is it justified, perhaps?
What the former president did to Karen Moore from News 24 is completely unjustifiable. It completely does not make sense, only from the point of view of former President Jacob Zuma himself, because it's a particular strategy to play for time, and him and his lawyers know this. So these cases are now becoming quite widespread worldwide, and it seems to have taken off in South Africa too. It's called SLAP cases, strategic litigation against public participation, which is intended to intimidate and intended to censor. So what had happened in the Karen Moore case was a whole lot of NGOs, media organizations, in the civil society space all came together. They protested and they took it to court. And she won. News 24 won. So, while the media keep winning these cases, in fact, they shouldn't need to be going to court at all. They shouldn't be, having to do these interdicts against interdicts. It just doesn't make sense. So, what this journalist had done was to have used what was already in the public domain. Already in the public domain was the former president's medical records. She didn't steal anything, nor did Amabungani steal any Moti files. It was a leak. And whistleblowing, if whistleblowing didn't happen, we wouldn't have had the state capture commission, indeed, that wouldn't have been the case either, to have heard all the evidence from whistleblowers and protection of whistleblowers, which is, of course, not enough. We don't have enough protection of whistleblowers, but we do have some protection of whistleblowers. And maybe these cases are going to get more frequent, unless, of course, maybe with all the winnings that the media has had so far, people will, or certainly crooks will realize that they shouldn't be going to court. They're going to lose. And not only are they going to lose, they're going to lose with huge costs.
Yeah. What should the public, Professor Glenda Daniels, what should the public glean from these cases, therefore, about the state of our democracy if we go back to, I think, what was the central point of your article, and that is that secrecy obstructs democracy?
Well, what the public have to realize is that media is there for them and to protect our democracy and to have openness and transparency. Media put things out there. They write about things. They hold people to account. If they're not holding people to account, that's what they should be doing. They shouldn't be biased and siding with any political party at all, or any kind of factionalism at all, and they should be strictly full of integrity. Media and public, for example, we have a water crisis. the media is supposed to tell people what this water crisis is about. Is it about maintenance? What is it about? We have an energy crisis. We have a pothole crisis. We have all sorts of crises. And that's what media is there for. Media is there for to explain what's going on and to help people understand. And any kind of secrecy actually puts a stop on the kind of free flow of information and therefore our democracy. So on the one hand, you could say we have a robust democracy because we have a free media, independent judiciary. On the other hand, we could also say it's a fragile democracy because anything could happen at any time to take away these gains.
Yeah, and the fragility of that democracy. Prof, I can't conclude the conversation without a question about the media itself needing to reflect, because we do get things wrong at times. How important is it that our processes do not fail us?
Sure. So, one of the big things, Boy, is the fact that we do have a press council, and media need to belong to that to adhere to those ethics and codes of ethics, and for media to be truthful and to be fair and to get, have to exercise right to replies for people they are going to be putting in newspapers and on television. The broadcast media has the BCCSA, Broadcast Complaints Commission. So it's very easy, especially in the run-up to elections next year, when media often want to be first with the news and they want to break news and, everything is exciting, etc. So the codes of journalism to verify information, to double-check facts, those are basics, journalism 101, that all journalists have to adhere to. Otherwise, trust in media is going to go down.
Professor.
By the way, trust in media is quite high up in South Africa compared to the rest of the world, mind you.
Well, that's fantastic to know. Thank you very much for that. That's Professor Glenda Daniels, and she has written quite an interesting piece talking about why the media needs to be allowed to do its work. All right.